I'm Chef Woods, and this is my student and assistant, Ron. Welcome. We're going to be doing pie dough today, so we're going to get right into it. So here Ron has 8 ounces of butter, which he has cubed, and it's still cold. We have 5.5 ounces of all-purpose flour. Then we have a teaspoon of salt, 1/4 ounce of sugar, and our 2 ounces of cold water. So he's going to start, we're going to put all of our dry into the bowl. So he's got his flour, salt, sugar. Next he's going to put in his cold cubed butter. Now this is kind of what we call the biscuit method. Recall if you've seen biscuits being made, we have all of our dry, we have our cold cubed butter in there, and we start to cut it in to our dry. Now with pie dough, we have 2 different types. We have our flaky pie dough, and we have a mealy pie dough. So depending on what type of pie you're making, if it's cooked fruit, cooked juice, we may want a flaky pie dough or we may want a mealy. So today we're going to be doing the flaky pie dough, where we don't want our butter cut in too much. We don't want it completely absorbed into our dry. So Ron's just going to continue to cut in this butter till we have a nice kind of chunky. And then we're going to add the liquid at the end. Now when you're doing larger batches of pie dough, say in the industry, a lot of times we'll use the mixer with the paddle attachment to kind of cut that butter in, and then slowly add our liquid just until it's absorbed. Doing good, Ron. So as you can see right now, just kind of give them a view. He's got his chunks of butter here. He's just kind of making them. We want them about pea size. So just kind of a pea size or hazelnut size. I like to go just a little bit smaller than that, but that's about the size that we're looking for our chunks of butter. I don't know if you can see it from that far. I'll get a close-up of it for you. All right, so meantime, he's going to continue to cut that butter in, and then we'll be able to add our liquid. All right, so Ron has cut in our butter here. You can see we just kind of have pea to hazelnut sized pieces here. It's nicely mixed in. Looks kind of scraggy, as I like to say. Looking good. So now he's going to start to add the liquid. All right. So now we've got our water that he's going to pour in. And he's just going to kind of gently, with his hands, kind of push it together, and folding it to get that liquid incorporated. Now you don't want to overmix, otherwise you're going to lose those little chunks of butter, which is what gives us that flakiness. So we don't want to overmix it. Notice he's just gently folding that in. All right, so now he has everything together. It has some nice moisture to it. He still has those chunks of butter in there. We're gonna put it onto plastic. Now when you put it on the plastic, you wanna pat it down, kind of into a nice circle. This way it will chill faster, but also when we take it out to roll it, it's gonna be easier for us to roll. You don't wanna have it in a big ball, because then you're gonna have to let it kind of come to room temperature in order to roll it out. But we want to work with our pie dough while it's cold. So nicely patting it just kind of into a little circle there. And he's going to wrap it up. Looks beautiful. And then we're going to get that into the refrigerator. We're going to let that chill for this size, probably about 45 minutes. And you just want to put it in the refrigerator, not in the freezer. All right, so next we're going to prepare our apples. So we already have our apples peeled here. Now we can slice them for our pies if you like the slices, or we can small dice them, or even a medium dice, whichever your preference is. Today I'm going to show you both. So to slice them, so we've got them peeled. I'm going to lop off the top there, take off your bottom. Now I'm just going to cut it in half. Cut it in half again. This is especially helpful if you don't have an apple core. I'm just going to take that, take out the core. quarters here. Take your cores out and your seeds. And once we have our quarters here, we can just then slice them nice and even. Oops, try little halves there. All right. If we want to small dice them, small medium, I'm going to slice them the same way. We can have just a nice little dice here. So either way, if you like them sliced or diced, you can do either. So again, just a slice. And then next we're gonna prepare our mixture, basically our sugar, our cinnamon, a little bit of butter, get those tossed, and then we'll start rolling out our pie dough and filling it up. All right, so now we're gonna show you how to do your apple pie filling. We have our sliced apples here. So that's about 2 apples that we have sliced. We're gonna be doing just little 4-inch pies, which is what you're going to be doing in class. So we have 2 apples sliced. We have 2 ounces of granulated sugar. We're going to toss that in. So just get those coated. Then we have 1 teaspoon of lemon juice, 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract, couple teaspoons, 2 teaspoons of all-purpose flour, and 1.5 teaspoons of ground cinnamon. So we're just going to put those in the bowl and toss the apples until everything's nicely coated. Perfect. Now we do have some butter off to the side here, but that's going to go on top once we assemble our pies. All right, so we have our pie dough out of the cooler. It's nice and chilled. I let it sit just for about 3 or 4 minutes, just to take a little bit of that chill off. We're gonna take our AP flour, the same type of flour that we used in the pie dough, to roll it out, because we don't want our pie dough to stick, but at the same time, we don't wanna use too much flour, because we don't wanna add and dry out our dough here. So with our roller, I'm not really going to apply much pressure here. I'm just going to kind of let the rolling pin do the work. Back and forth, just nice even strokes here. After a few, we're just going to turn it 1/4 of the way. If your edges start to crack a little bit, just kind of push them back together. That's okay. Again, not adding much pressure. Lift up, make sure I'm not sticking. If I'm sticking a little bit, I might want to add just a little bit more flour here. Again, kind of push those edges. Do my 1/4 turn. All right, 1/4 turn here. Again, I'm just kind of letting the rolling pin do the work. Whoop. Make sure I'm not sticking. Another 1/4 turn, kind of push my edges back in. You can notice here kind of that marbling. We still have our butter here. What's going to happen is that butter's going to melt when we hit it into the oven, and it's going to create layers of steam, so that steam is going to give us that flakiness we're looking for. Another 1/4 turn, make sure I'm not sticking. Now what I always say is you just kind of take your, a little flour on there, you take your hand and just kind of gently rub across the top. You can maybe see where you might have a little thickness on your edges or in the middle, but that way you can kind of see where you're not very even with your thickness here. All right, but I'm looking nice and smooth. All right, now we have our pie dough rolled out. We're looking about, what'd you say that's about 1/8 of an inch thickness. All right. We don't want it too thin, but we also don't want it too thick. Now I have just a 4-inch pie tin here for just an individual pie. Now, if you have cutters that are a little bit larger than the circumference, you can use those. It makes it a little bit easier. But if you don't, you can just use it freehand. So you're just gonna take your paring knife. You're gonna go almost about 1 inch just around so you have some nice overlap of the pie. You don't want your pie dough to be the exact same size. You need some overlap there because we're gonna show you how to do a lattice top. All right, so here we go. That's gonna go right in there. You want to take your thumbs here and get that pressed down all the way to the bottom and on the sides. All right. Now you notice that overlap here. All right. Just going to set that to the side. Now for our lattice top, we're going to use the rest of this dough here to make little strips. So you can use your pizza cutter if you've got your little pastry cutter here. All right. Take this excess off. We're just going to do some nice long strips and then we'll cut those to size in just a bit. Now if you have a ruler, you can kind of mark it so you have nice even sizes. Notice I've got kind of a thicker one. You can do thinner if you'd like. So I'm gonna kind of stick with that size here. All right, and you can just continue depending on how many pies. Now, just to kind of show you on the table here, and I'll show you on the pie as well, but how we form our lattice. All right. So we're gonna pretend like we're putting this on top of a pie, but I just want to show you on the table so you can kind of see the procedure first. Get my pieces. Right. So we lay out our first strips here. Now, pretend like our pie's kind of in the middle there. Now to get our next strip, we kind of start in the middle and work our way out. So we're going to take every other one here. Then you're going to lay your strip on, just like that. And those strips are going to go back over. Because with the lattice, what we're looking for is for it to go over, under, over, under, over, under. All right? So since we did those, since these are over, now we need to pull these back to put our next strip down. All right? And notice the spacing too. I try to keep the spacing the same for each one. All right? Now again, I go back for the opposite ones, pull those. That next one down, you can start to see the lattice forming. You can start to see that beautiful lattice forming. Cut there.
Ready.
All right, so now we have our lattice strips cut out. We have the bottom crust of our apple pie ready in our little 4-inch tin. We have our diced filling here, so I'm gonna pile our filling into our bottom crust. You want it piled fairly high because these apples are gonna cook down a little bit. I made a little extra filling so we can make some extra pies later for us all. So we have our filling in here. Now we're gonna put our lattice strip on. get it to kind of stick, I'm just going to take a little bit of water with my pastry brush here. You can use egg wash as well, which is what we're going to use at the end to give it a nice little shine. We don't want too much there. All right, so starting with our lattice, I'm just going to start in the middle here. Do our strips. I'm not going to press it quite yet because I'm going to have to take these out. Okay. So again, I'm going to take those two right in the middle here. Now I'm just going to take my kitchen scissors, cut that excess off. Alright, now I'm going to give it just a little pinch here. Alright, so everything sticks.
So you're pinching the lattice down to the overflow?
Onto the overhang of the bottom crust. Alright, now what we're going to do, I'm just going to flatten that out, is we're going to roll it towards us and pinch it. See here? So I'm just kind of turning that over. Just kind of seal it. Some people like to do it under. You can do it under if you'd like. The lattice, I like to do it over so you don't see. Now we're going to crimp it just with our fingers here, all right? So we're just going to take my two fingers here and the one here and crimp, kind of gently pressing. Sealing that in. Now we're going to let that chill just for a few minutes so that that butter can reset before we put it in the oven.
Okay.
All right, so we let our pies chill before we put them in the oven. Couple things that I forgot to mention. Before we put our lattice on, we put our little dots of butter on the top that are in the recipe. And going back to our pie dough itself on the recipe, when we were first recording, I misspoke on the amount of flour. So it was actually 10.5 ounces of flour, all-purpose flour. I think I mentioned it was just 5.5, but it's actually 10.5. So sorry for that mistake. You'll have the recipe posted up on your Brightspace anyway for the recipe. So we have these chilled. This is the one that I demonstrated. This one here, I did just kind of a wider lattice top, and then here we have bronze. So before we put them in the oven, we're just going to do a little egg wash on it. So we just cracked one egg. Take your pastry brush, dab off a little bit, and just a light little egg wash on top of these. And if you'd like, you can sprinkle a little turbinado sugar on top, or just regular granulated sugar if you want a little bit of crispier crust there. Again, just a gentle egg wash. You don't want it too drippy. So you always kind of dab off a little bit. Get bronze here. Then we're going to bake this in the oven at 375 for our ovens. You may need it a little bit higher at 400. I've dropped the temperature once we get a bit of a color on this, just so I don't, so we can make sure that the bottom crust gets cooked. All right. All right, so our pies have come out of the oven. They took about 30 minutes. We started out at 375. Once we had a nice golden color, I lowered it to 350, just so it didn't get too dark, but still kind of bake our crust underneath. So we have bronze pie here, and the pie that I was showing you as well. And a good way to tell is if you have some nice color underneath on your crust. That's one way to know that your pie is finished. Still a little warm there. Pies are still a little warm. You can see some little bit of my juice coming out here. We have some beautiful color on that. If we were to cut into this, we'll see some nice flaky pie crust here. Kind of see the layers. It might be a little difficult to see here. We have some nice, beautiful layers. Nice crumble to it. Look at that. Beautiful, nice. All right. And that's our apple pie with lattice top. You're about to repeat it yourself, so have fun with it.
Have fun.